Hello and welcome back to the GorillaBiker, and today what we're going to be talking about is why you specifically should use lube for your cables on your motorcycle. It's something that a lot of people neglect. It's something that I helped someone with recently here in my garage, and their cables were quite dry. And also like misadjusted, and we're going to go through a couple of those things here today. I've been asked about them recently, so without further ado, I'm going to move this back and actually put on the rear stand, and I might even throw on these MZS tuning levers on the Z900RS while we do our work. Oh, and this will be done on the Z900RS. Okay, so if you have never removed a clutch cable before, basically the easiest thing to do usually is to kind of line up. I'm going to see, not the easiest thing to do, it's a required thing to do. So this, where are we here now? There's a line here, like an open line. I'll try to boost the thing. What you're going to want to do is line this up, and there's also another cut open on your actual cable. You're going to want to line them all up together, then, which we'll do, and then we're going to want to remove this and then take this whole assembly off and remove the cable. And once we have the actual cable out, we can pop this quick adjuster locker off, and we can then clamp on our oiler juicer, which is here. This is our cable luber. You have a narrower end and a wider end, and then I'm also going to be using PB blaster chain and cable lubricant, which I have used already in the past, and it worked really well with the CB750, as its cables were old and rather dried out. So first and foremost, what we are going to do is, on all these bikes you'll have a bolt like this one here, and then underneath you'll have a retaining nut, essentially, just to kind of keep it all locked together. And it also looks like you might actually have to take off, in this situation, yeah, we will, the clutch switch, which is not something I've dealt with before, but at least we get to show everyone. So I'm not sure how well you're going to be able to see this, but right there underneath there are two little screws, and that's what we have to remove in order to take out our clutch switch. This is a clutch switch. What it does is, this guy here is what tells the bike is the clutch or is the clutch not pulled, which allows you to start it in gear, and also I think in certain cases can change the fueling on the bike. Weird setup, but it actually is blocking this nut here, which looks like someone did take off before without removing this and chewed up the nut. However, what can you do? And then down here, these are the two little screws we just took out, and those two little screws are what hold this on. So you do need to remove them in order to get to the nut, in order to remove our clutch handle, which is a little bit convoluted, but what can you do? So then our nut size is a 10. Yeah, and it looks like someone in the past did not realize that you had to take off that clutch perch, because they just got in here with like a vice grips or a pliers and pinched the living Jesus out of it, which is fine. These things are not a big deal. And then that pin just drops right out. It actually has a nice little retention groove here. Sometimes they have like a slip joint up the top. So then what we'll have to do is just turn those lines like I was talking about up the top. This should pull out now. Down here the clutch cable actually sits into a little groove. You're going to angle all that right, and then just pop out your cable, and that is it, which will then allow us to basically fully remove our actual cable adjuster, of which there was actually plenty left of. And then you're going to want to take off this lock ring here altogether in order to get on the lubricator. And we'll put some lube on everything when we're done. But now you should be able to see that's your exposed cable, all right? So this is a cable lubrificator, okay? Here is where the like cable end, the ball end of the cable goes through. You just slot it through there, let the ball thicken out, and then this goes around your meteor end of your actual cable. So hopefully that'll make sense in a second, but essentially you want to push that through, make sure that you're in there, and then you just want to tighten them. All of these, the good ones generally have, or the better ones, none of these are particularly good, none of them work particularly well, but the better ones have 2 thumb screws, just so you can kind of slowly tighten it down in stages. And you want to get this as tight as you can. And the reason that you do this, all right, this is the same for throttle cables and everything else, is basically you have your actual metal cable component, right, that does the moving. Then you have your outer protection sleeve, and then the inside of that outer protection sleeve you have another sleeve that the cable actually runs through, and over time, you know, you get dirt or whatever else in. So this acts as kind of an extra barrier all the way in there, and also kind of washes everything out. So what we're going to be doing now is we're going to be spraying lube until you see it come out down here, which how I'm going to check that, because obviously while recording and whatnot can be a little bit more difficult. So we're going to get a piece of paper, and also it protects your bike. I'm going to just pull that through here, and when I see that basically get juiced up, I know that we have enough spritz. So how you basically do this is this little small hole right here. We're going to put the spritzer nozzle, this guy here, into that, and then we're just going to spray. And this is not an exact science. I don't think I've ever done this where it wasn't like a semi pain in the bum. Especially as these little straws never want to stay where you want them to stay. There we go. So as you can see there, we got plenty coming out there already. And that's honestly all there is to it. So what I'm going to do now is take all this off, give everything a wipe down, but pretty much that's genuinely all there is to lubing your cables. And like I said, that goes for both clutch cable and throttle cables, and I'm going to do the throttle cables in a separate video because I can already see this one is running longer than I would have otherwise hoped. You're going to do this swap as well, as you do have to reuse this bush here, which just should press out. While I'm at it, after I press this out, I'm going to give this a quick clean and then lube it up. Okay, so I'm actually not going to use the new piece because I just don't think it's going to work. The new MZS one, the sizes aren't right, so what I'm going to do now is anti-seize up this and then put it back in there. I will run this like all the way in and then all the way out again, just to get the threads nice and coated with the anti-seize, which is all over my fingers now apparently. So then what you can do to make this easier on yourself is put this pretty much all the way in, pull your cable through like so. Oh, actually you want to put it back onto the handle first. That will make your life a lot easier. Put it back in, just in through the channel. Do a little flippy aroundy. That goes in there. You put your bolt back through. This is all very easy, like assembly stuff, and I'll show you how to adjust all this in the end. Once it's like we're actually pretty much there. So one thing you have to be really careful of when doing clutch switches and whatnot is when you're refitting them, you want to make sure that your pin is actually pushed in, because if you don't push your pin in, you can have a very bad time, because you can very easily break the little push rod that's actually on the little clutch switch. And that goes for your brake switch as well. When you're taking on and off your brake or your clutch, you just want to be really careful of that little switch, that essentially you're actually hitting it where you're supposed to and whatnot. So now that that's all back on, you're going to see a problem here, right? And that's the amount of clutch slop we have. All right, now this is very easy to fix. We're just going to roll out. Now this piece is fine, right? This is on a spring. What you're looking for is basically the play in this piece only, okay? And what we're going to do is we're just going to keep moving out our adjuster until you get to like a preset. So that's a little bit. You don't want too little, and you definitely don't want too much. So that's too little. That's about right. And you can kind of play with this yourself and see what feels good for you, but this clutch is weird in that it has like a little bit of take up in this spring section that basically the clutch handle has, which I assume is for if you're bumping it or whatever else. But essentially this piece here, all right, I want to make sure you can see that, yeah. So this black piece here, that imagine this was all fixed. Usually you want about 10 mil of play, roughly. Obviously that does vary bike to bike, manufacturer to manufacturer, but usually that's what you're looking for, is about 10 mil of play right there. So I'm pretty happy with that, but what you also want to do is full lock. So I don't know how easy this is going to be to kind of get across to you, but you want to go full lock right. Okay. And then you want to go all the way back to this side and make sure that you're good there too. But the key thing about this is why I wanted to do this is my clutch was a little bit stiff. And also something else to note is this was really hard to adjust on the fly. You should be able to adjust this by hand. So, you know, if you were to loosen off your lock nut, which you lock in against, and this always causes confusion, you want to lock it in against here, and that stops this moving, okay? Because they're on the same thread. But this should be really easy to move by hand, which it wasn't before, and now it's inhaled something. But the reason for that is if you're out, you know, on the road and you're like, oh, this feels wrong, you can just adjust it on the fly. That's the whole purpose of that. And then over here, you know, on your throttle cables, which we'll do, you have two quick adjusters here, but we'll go through them on the next video. So if you watched, thank you very much for watching. I know this was a video that has been requested a couple of times by a couple of different people. I have previously done, like, you know, clutch adjustment and whatnot while part of other videos, but I guess people thought it would be easier to follow if it was just a standalone. So hopefully this helps. If it does, please do let me know down in the comments. It's always nice to hear that you've actually helped people and something you've done in your life is of value, because my actual job is just, it's corporate, you know, corporate old jobby poo. It is what it is. But yeah, hopefully this helped someone. Hopefully it answered you know, one of the questions or two of the questions that was being asked. The key things I will say is that bush that everything swivels on, make sure you lubricate that. I personally just use anti-seize because you don't want it to seize, and you do want a nice kind of coating between that bush and, you know, the material around it. You will see over time they get damaged. I don't particularly have an issue with that. I think once you put on enough anti-seize or whatever else, it's absolutely fine. Some people prefer like copper anti-seize. I just have silicone based anti-seize there, so I'll use that. Don't use like waterproof grease and whatnot, because I found that's really thick and actually can make it feel like the cable itself is binding, whereas that actually just your grease is too thick. So I would recommend against using waterproof grease. Just do this service every now and again. It is pretty watertight, obviously not completely waterproof, but it is hard for water to get in there, so it is worth doing that way. Other watch out, be careful of your clutch switch, be careful not to break it, because it's just money you don't need to be spending. They're not very expensive, but it's also a pain to go get one, so don't do that. And then also anti-seize on your actual clutch adjuster. I put it on all my adjusters. Like when I'm doing a chain and sprocket change, I'll pull out my axle adjusters and I'll put anti-seize on those as well, just because that type of thing is what tends to get ignored sometimes, not on purpose, it just gets ignored, and then over time can become an issue with binding and whatnot. So those are my key things, is lubricate all the moving bits, or the bits that you want to move. Like I said, that quick adjuster for me was like super tight recently, so I knew I needed to do this, and that cable was feeling a little bit dry. So way happier with how that feels now. And you know, if you do this service to your throttle and your clutch, I guarantee you'll feel the difference and you'll feel a lot better for it. And if you do this and it does feel better, please let me know in the comments. Video coming soon for the throttle side. I will do that, I promise. And yeah, if you've watched, thank you very much for watching. If you did enjoy this video, I very rarely ask this, but please do hit that like button, because YouTube doesn't like me anymore. And you know, if you feel like this may benefit some of you know, maybe share the video to them, because YouTube likes that too. Not that I'm trying to become a professional, but it's nice when they do well, you know. And yeah, that's it. Until next time, thank you very much as always to all of my patrons, including the 2 new patrons. Massive thank you to you guys. I don't know why you do it, but I do appreciate it. So yes, thank you very, very much. And yeah, until next time, thanks again for watching. Adios. Outro crew, what is your least favorite job to do maintenance wise on a bike? For some reason, I find that the throttle and clutch get ignored a lot, even though they're hypercritical. You use them all the time and it's very tactile because you can feel them all the time, and people do tend to ignore them. You know, like that also your brake lever, that little bush needs lubrication. It all makes it feel better, especially if you live in like a humid climate, which I know, can you see me developing sweat patches down here, but I am, because it's always hot and humid here in the summer. But it's one of those things that always makes a huge difference. I recently did that service just for myself on the V-Strom and mentioned it, I think, in a story, and then someone asked me to make a video, which is why this is here. But yeah, I would super highly recommend doing all that tactile stuff, because it's obvious and you feel it straight away and it feels great. Bye, Outro Pro.